Today I'm going to talk about the advantages of living in Hong Kong versus New York City. Having living in both cities for a long time, I can confidently describe some of the advantages in each of the cities. I firmly believe there are advantages and disadvantages of both cities. So in this part one of these two-part conversation, I'm going to talk about why Hong Kong is better than New York City. And then tomorrow I'm going to talk about the things that are better in New York versus Hong Kong. So the first thing is I like Hong Kong is because of how convenient it is. The MTR, the subway system, is just so much better than the one in New York. In fact, I was just in New York, a couple weeks ago, and still, it's just same old dirty, full of rats, very full of like homeless people roaming around every single train. In Hong Kong subway system, you won't see that. It's always very efficient, very clean, very fast, on time, and people usually just mind their own business, and you won't see people just screaming on top of their lungs, or sometimes a homeless person will walk in a train and people need to walk away to avoid them. You won't find that anywhere here in Hong Kong. Yeah, there's one story where I think there's just like this story for every New Yorker has like a horror story, if you must say, about living in New York. For me, it was on the subway. So a few years ago when I went back, everyone started, I was on the train, and then everybody started running away from one train to the other side of the train. And sorry, I had to go back. So I was on a train going into Manhattan from Queens, and I was sitting on a train cart, and then all of a sudden I saw a guy running through one of the trains, and then everyone started like following them, like just running alongside to the other side of the train. So naturally you would think, okay, something's happening over there, what's going on? I'm not going to stick around to find out. So naturally I follow, you know just like flocking to the other end of the train along with other people. So it was really weird. And then like people were saying, oh, there's a guy with a gun. And then we reached the end of the train, everybody was just crouching down, waiting for train to stop. Someone should ask, oh, should we pull the emergency brakes to let the driver know? At that point we were just in between station, and people are like, no, we should just like wait a couple more minutes, wait till the train reaches station, because if we stop the train, it's just we're just going to be stuck with whatever is happening in that train cart. So we waited. That was like kind of scary. It was like one of the scariest moments of my life, where you just don't know what's happening next. Somebody could run through the train doors and then start shooting a gun or something. So luckily we reached the next stop, and then everybody just kind of rushed out of the train once the door opened. And then we were able to find a police officer, and we clarified that it was some two guys started fighting on one of the train cards. People thought one of them had a gun, and then they just started running, and it just caused this whole chaos and panic in everyone on the train. So yeah, I mean, I don't think that's the first time that happened on a train. That's certainly not going to be the last. That's my NYC story of horror things that happened. I've heard from friends that there are tons of stories, like similar stories like that. So yeah, back to the point. New York City trains are not safe, in my opinion. they, you know, it's just they have police officers on there, but there's just not enough. And then there's like a lot of homeless people, lots of mentally disabled people on there, and it's, you know, like you need to avoid them, and you will never find that here in Hong Kong. Anyways, point number two, uh, cleanliness. I just find the Hong Kong city is cleaner than the streets in New York, mainly because the government cleans the street like consistently almost every day, and in New York you just see trash everywhere on the street. It's they I'm sure like the city cleans the streets, but it's just not enough, you know? Like you just see trash everywhere, people throw trash everywhere, there's not enough garbage bins. It's not a pleasant like journey to walk around the city. Um, so yeah, I mean that's one of the main things that I like more about Hong Kong. Um, Third thing is, as I mentioned in point one above, safety. Safety is a huge thing in anyone's lives, right? Like in Hong Kong, like I could walk back at midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. in the morning without having to look over my shoulders and worry that somebody might come attack me. Whereas in New York, anything could happen. I feel like I just, you know, wouldn't feel safe there. So I don't really go out that much that late anymore when I'm there, just because I live kind of far away from Manhattan, and it's kind of hard to get back, and I just don't want to have to deal with you know, the subway system at midnight or after, and the, you know, potentially, you know, there will be just, I feel like not secured afterwards. So I've heard from friends, I've heard friends having a lot of stories where they just all of a sudden, you know, they're walking on the street. This was during COVID, and then, you know, more than a couple of them got just punched in the face, like out of nowhere. So I think it was have to do with like Asian hate during COVID time, but still, like it's these kind of stories are everywhere, unavoidable. So you wouldn't hear any about that in Hong Kong for sure. Another thing is Hong Kong has lots of things to do outdoors. In terms of outdoors, not that New York doesn't have things to do, but it just has a lot of natures in Hong Kong. It's very close proximity to mountains and water. Is surrounded by outdoors nature. So I could go from a hike, like when I walk out of my door, like when I walk 20 minutes, I'll be able to walk to a mountain to go up to a hike. Everything is within an hour's reach in Hong Kong. Lots of mountain, lots of hikes. I love that. It's one of the hobbies that, you know, I really enjoy just in Hong Kong. It's also close to a lot of beaches and water, and you could access them very easily in Hong Kong. And I'm sure New York has some too, but it's just like not that easily accessible, you know. So that's something that I really enjoy in Hong Kong. And then to tie that into the next point is the weather. Weather in Hong Kong, it starts to get cold. It's generally very hot, right? And since it's on the equator, and it's very humid during the summertime, and it could get very hot. But it doesn't really fall below a certain weather. It doesn't fall below like, you know, maybe 10 degree like Celsius. It doesn't fall below that that often. So and the winter time only lasts maybe from like December till March maximum. Those are the days that you need to wear long sleeves, but those are like actually very lovely weather actually compared to New York. New York would get cold after like October till, even when I went back a couple weeks ago, it was still cold. Um, so October to April, those are like very cold weather. Like, you don't even want to go outside, that kind of weather. It's always snowing and you just want to stay indoors. So Hong Kong, it's just, it gives you, 3 extra months out of the year that I could spend more time outdoors and, do water activities. I think that's what everybody should be doing, really, to spend time in the nature. So that's my opinion. Last couple points is Hong Kong has very low taxes versus the US. So taxes in Hong Kong is generally 15 to 17% all across. Very, very, very cheap. One of the best like tax havens in the world. In New York, and of course, like you get federal, state, and local tax that could tax up to, 35 to 40% of your salary. So you don't really get to keep much after tax. Lastly, I think it's everybody can feel the same way about this. It's just a tipping culture in the U.S. in general. I feel like everywhere I go right now in the U.S., they expect tip. Like, if you go to a coffee shop, you go to, you take a taxi, you go to for a haircut, they all expect a tip. And and the restaurant's tipping culture is even getting worse. Like, I hear it's like the expected the norm is like 20% now, which is ridiculous to me. In Hong Kong, like if you go to a restaurant, a sit down restaurant, people are serving you 10% tips all across. Like that's just like what's being billed on the bill. So there's not going to be any awkwardness. There's not going to be, like you don't need to figure out like what tips that you need to give. And you don't need to tip anything at like coffee shops, haircut. You can if you want, but in general you don't. Like in these like very, you just like going to Starbucks, grabbing a coffee, or like in a taxi, like you don't really need to tip anything. So I think that really, still like puts me off when I go back to the US. It's just like everybody's expecting a tip now, which I still refuse to give. Like sometimes like for coffee, people are just like kind of doing their job, giving you coffee. They're not putting any extra effort into serving you. So why why is a tip expected? I don't understand. It's there. I don't know if they expect it or not, but it's there for you to have the option to give or not. But I don't even think that should be an option too. Like you putting pressure on your customers to feel obligated to give a tip. So it doesn't make sense to me. Anyways, for tomorrow, I'm going to talk about the advantages of New York versus Hong Kong. See you tomorrow.